All right, and already, welcome to another edition of Politics Alive with Neil. So we're going to talk about Liz Cheney. She's a member of one of the two parties in Washington, D.C., the two parties being the establishment and the anti-establishment. She is a leader in the establishment wing of, well, there is no, I was going to say establishment wing of the Republican Party, but really doesn't matter what party you're in. You're either establishment or anti-establishment. So there's probably, as you guys probably know, there's Liz Cheney's running for re-election in her home state of Wyoming, and she's getting a big financial boost from donors. But here's she's supposedly a conservative, but looking at this article and a few others like it, let me just tell you what's going on. So top Democrat donors boost Liz Cheney's campaign for putting country over party. And by the way, a lot of this is ridiculous, so I'll address it in the end as opposed to trying to correct every little thing as we go along. Obviously, she's not putting party over country. But yeah, let me just get through this, and then I'll share some opinions. So top Democrat donors boost Liz Cheney's campaign for putting country over party. So Democratic donors are helping Representative Liz Cheney in her struggling re-election campaign, citing her as a Republican example of someone who has stood against former President Donald Trump. Funders who fueled the campaigns of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are now looking to help the Wyoming Republican as she faces a likely ousting by a pro-Trump primary challenger. In quotes, we agree on little, if anything, but she has done something very, very few people in history have done, which is put her country over party and politics to stand in defense of the Constitution. Film producer, unquote, film producer Jeffrey Katzenberg told the New York Times. I know I said I wouldn't comment, but do we think for 1 second that film producer Jeffrey Katzenberg or the New York Times cares about the U.S. Constitution? I mean, just on every. Anyway, enough about that. And there's a whole list of other wealthy Democrats. Jeffrey Katzenberg, Jane Fraser, who's the LinkedIn co-founder, Reid Hoffman, a billionaire hedge fund manager, Seth Klarman, and so on and so forth, have all given to Miss Cheney's re-election campaign. So a bunch of rich Democrats are just giving her money. Mr. Klarman, so he's the hedge fund manager, an independent, who holds liberal views on social policy, says Miss Cheney is the, in quotes, strongest voice in the GOP when it comes to upholding the Constitution. Ms. Cheney has also been asking Wyoming Democrats to switch parties and vote for her in a state that Mr. Trump won by more than 40 margin points, by more than a 40-point margin in both 2016 and 2020. So yeah, that's always so I guess I am going to comment a little bit. If you're a Republican and you're having to ask Democrats to vote for you because no Republicans like you, that might be a sign that you're not really conservative. Miss Cheney, is the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, who is and she's one of the most vocal Trump critics in the Republican Party. She's also criticized her party for what she sees as a cult-like devotion to the former president. So here's where we really get at the root of the problem. And this is the only part about her that's even vaguely honorable in what otherwise is just a truly reprehensible behavior. Basically, Donald Trump was critical of her father, Dick Cheney, so she's mad about that. President Trump was critical of her father, so now she sort of has a family vengeance. So on that one issue, sort of having, the desire to defend your family against people that are not in the family attacking you, I get that, I support that. Unfortunately, Dick Cheney was, I don't know if he's a war criminal, but he lied and got us the weapons of mass destruction. So he does actually deserve the criticism, but you don't expect. I don't expect somebody's daughter to admit their own father is a horrible human being, responsible for at least one, probably multiple unnecessary wars and the unnecessary deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, and for the United States being an unnecessary, unjust, never-ending Mideast war. So that's a tough pill to swallow for old Liz, if that's what your father is and has done. So Liz Cheney's work on the January 6th committee investigating the 2021 Capitol riot has elevated her national profile as an anti-Trump Republican, prompting her primary challenger to use her role as leverage in their own appeal to the base. So basically the actual Republicans in Wyoming, or the actual non-establishment, non-shills of the Democrat Party, are saying, hey, nobody wants this. Why are you doing this? And that's what you should do. You should point out what your opponent does in office if you're running against them, if what they're doing is bad. So polls indicate that Ms. Cheney is down significantly against her top challenger, a lawyer named Harriet Hageman, who is backed by President Donald Trump. A Club for Growth poll conducted in the end of May had Ms. Hageman up by 30 points over Ms. Cheney. In a recent debate, Ms. Hageman described the January 6th committee as totally unfair and contrary to everything that our country stands for, which I agree. We'll get into that later. They talk about January 6th, but that's not what the people of Wyoming are talking about, Ms. Hageman says. What they're talking about is the gas prices, yes. What they're talking about is the food prices, yes. They're talking about the fact that they can't travel. In addition to that, we have serious questions about the 2020 election. So I don't want to get too deep into that, but the way our elections are set up, you can't audit them. So whether or not they weren't fair. My position is whether or not it was enough to alter the results, we'll never know because you can't audit them. We've done some recounts, but a recount just counts what votes have come in. Nobody's audited the votes to see if they're legitimate. So I think 3 counties in all of America have done a full voter audit, and all of them have found a significant fraud. But we have not really done any. We have not done it nationwide or statewide, nor is it even possible to do that. So the question is not whether the election was fair. The question is why is the system set up that we cannot even audit it? So once again, what Ms. Hageman said, we have serious questions about the 2020 election. That's fine. Ms. Cheney defended her position on the committee and her stance against the lies of Mr. Trump, particularly around his claims that the 2020 election was stolen. In quotes, I'm asking for your vote, and I'm asking for you to understand that I will never violate my oath of office, and if you're looking for somebody who will, then you need to vote for someone else on this stage because I won't. I will always put my oath first, says Liz Cheney. That's a Liz Cheney quote, unquote. So the Wyoming primary schedule for August 16th. Wyoming's, I think, about 85% Republican. So whoever went to primary is going to get elected. So that is what's going on. Basically, all these Democrats know that Liz Cheney is what I guess the Soviets used to call a useful idiot, but Liz Cheney is a useful idiot to the Democrat Party. Here's just a little. Something I wrote, just sort of in response to Liz Cheney. So it's a little bombastic at the beginning. Democrats hate America. Liz Cheney hates America. So naturally, once Liz became a traitor and joined the January 6th witch-hunt hearings, the Democrats started to love her. And then people were asking me, well, why would you call her a traitor? Simply because she is on the right side of the law. She stands for conservative values like a real Republican should. She definitely ain't no Democrat. The progressive Democrats hate America. She's against Trumpism, and that's a good thing. I would love to see her and DeSantis be on the same ticket. That is my dream team. So, sorry about the shake there, but so that's I think that's what Democrat shills are out there pretending to be Republicans are saying. So let me just address that. Right side of the law, in quotes. There's nothing right about being part of a biased witch hunt put together by Nancy Pelosi. A kangaroo hearing that only allows one side to present testimony. A testimony full of endless lies, like Trump tried to grab the steering wheel from the Secret Service agent, and 1,000 other lies. So once again, it's not a real hearing where both sides can present evidence. Only one side can present evidence, and a lot of the evidence is just somebody like, that woman, Cassidy, whatever her name was, just saying stuff like, oh, I heard, it's like hearsay. I heard someone else say this, that someone else said that, and then people, even with the steering wheel story, that Trump tried to grab the steering wheel, it's just so dumb. The way the presidential limo is set up, the window doesn't come down. The driver is separated from, the back, for security reasons. Also, none of the windows come down on the presidential limo except the driver's window, and that only comes down 3 inches. So there's no way that the president could even grab the steering wheel if he wanted to. Secondly, the Secret Service agent that was the driver and the Secret Service chief both said, oh, we'll testify that never happened. But the January 6th committee would not have them. So it's kangaroo court. So anyway, there's this thing. It's this hearing. There's the January 6th hearing. So this is a hearing where the only two Republicans that are it was put together by Nancy Pelosi. The only two Republicans that are allowed in the thing are two anti-Trumpers. This Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. The Republican leadership said, hey, we have some people, and they wanted them to put them on the committee. Nancy would not allow it. Only anti-Trumpers. So basically, Liz Cheney is playing the role of a useful idiot. And only anti-Trump testimony is allowed. So this is not justice. This is not law. This is not even fact-finding, especially when those that could refute the lies are not even allowed to come in. So in every manner, it's a show trial, much like they have in banana republics when a dictator takes over and goes after his predecessor. This is the establishment going after an outsider who dared to question their right to power. As for January 6th itself, it wasn't an insurrection. It was people upset because they thought there was election fraud, right? Some overreacted. Some people, one guy broke into Nancy Pelosi's office. He put his feet on her desk. Another guy carried a podium. Another guy put on buffalo horns and stood at the speaker's area. Somebody, supposedly, somebody took a poop in the hallway. So all that's sort of gross. In other words, I don't recommend taking a poop in the hallway if you're not happy with election results. But let's not pretend like that's an insurrection. This is just, some people that overreacted. It wasn't a case where people wanted the U.S. government to be overthrown. That's what an insurrection is. It wasn't a case of people wanting election results ignored. It was a case of people actually wanting democracy to be upheld. So I'm not saying they were correct or not, as I talked about election fraud before. I'm simply saying that their intentions were honorable. Their intentions weren't to overthrow the government. Their intentions were to make sure the election was fair as possible. So to ignore that and then act like they were trying to take over the U.S. government by trespassing in the Capitol for a few hours, as the January 6th witch-hunt claims, that's laughably dishonest. Even more, so once again, they shouldn't have trespassed. They shouldn't have, apparently it bumped into some police officers and stuff. Some officers got injured. All of that stuff shouldn't have happened. That's not good. I don't recommend it. That's not the best way to do it, but it was not an insurrection. It was not a coup. And also, the only person that got killed that day in the Capitol was a Trump supporter that a Capitol Hill police officer, saw. She climbed through a window, and then he just shot her in the neck and killed her. No warning, just shot her. So, was that an overreaction? I don't know, but think about every other police shooting. There's riots and everything else. Speaking of which, as far as how silly this stupid January 6th hearing is, there were 10 months of almost nightly murder riots by BLM and other left-wing groups in 2020. So over 30 deaths in those BLM George Floyd riots. And that's even per Wikipedia, so hardly a right-wing source. So over 30 deaths, hundreds of police are injured, in excess, according to insurance companies, in excess of $4 billion in property damage. Lives and businesses were ruined. Did the Democrats have a hearing for that? Was there a BLM riots hearing? Did I miss that? Did the Democrats send 30,000 National Guard troops to protect the cities affected, as they did on the Capitol in the days after the January 6th trespassing incident? Did they assign thousands of FBI and other law enforcement agents to capture, jail, hold without bail, and attempt to capture every single person who participated in a BLM riot? Nope. The Democrats did the opposite. They took a knee in solidarity with the BLM. They took a knee. Come on. We all saw it. How many Democrat politicians took a knee as the BLMs were burning down American cities? The Democrats took a knee in solidarity and submission to them. Not only that, they invited a member of BLM, a group founded, by the way, by admitted Marxists, and it's based on a racist worldview, and also based on the lie, hands up, don't shoot, and also just a general racist worldview, to be an official speaker at the DNC convention. That's right. They invited a member of BLM to speak at the Democrat convention. All the while they claimed that white supremacy is the biggest domestic threat in America since the Civil War. All while pushing the lie that Donald Trump, by the way, this is one of the great hoaxes, that the Democrats pushed the lie that Donald Trump said white supremacists, quote, white supremacists and neo-Nazis were very fine people. Donald Trump never said that, by the way. I'm not going to debunk it. I've done that before, but just look it up. Just put in Donald Trump, very fine people hoax. It's a total hoax. Like, nobody believes me, but look for yourself. So anyway, so that's a hoax that was pushed by Democrats. This is a well-known lie that even now, even this week, or a couple weeks ago, when there was the Buffalo shooting, Joe Biden repeated it again. Now, this guy is the president of the United States. He should know. Well, he does know it's a lie. But so that's a well-known. Biden's repeating that. As for these white supremacists being the biggest threat to America today, I've never met a white supremacist. I've never even met anyone who has met a white supremacist. I mean, if you've met a white supremacist, let me know. I've never met one. Apparently they're everywhere, but I guess, I guess I just have a blind spot for white supremacists. The only white supremacists that cause any real damage that I can think of in recent history is maybe you could say this Buffalo shooter was sort of a white supremacist. I mean, he certainly certainly was a racist. He didn't like black people. But in regard to this Buffalo shooter, he self-identified as a communist. In his manifesto, if you read it, I mean, mainly he's crazy, so let's just admit that. But if you're going to look at him by his own words, he identified as a left-wing authoritarian, so it's left-wing violence. Also, in the same year, we've had this guy, Nation of Islam guy, drive to Washington, D.C. and shoot a Capitol police officer. We had the guy, Daryl, whatever his name is, but in Waukesha, that drove his SUV into a crowd of 60, basically parade, but he hit 60 white people. He hit them based on this. He was a black supremacist, and I think he killed 12. And then we had the New York City subway shooter. So that's 3 examples of black supremacists committing mass crimes. I don't blame all black people. But if you're going to say what's a bigger problem, I mean, I don't see any right wing. Certainly I don't see any violence coming from the right wing. And even, let's just talk about January 6th. I keep hearing that the Proud Boys, there's the white supremacist group. Now, I'm not here to defend them. They just sort of seem like an immature group of youngish guys. But from what I understand, it's about 10 to 15%. It's a certain percentage Asian. The leader is a black Latino. I don't know. It's just, these are white supremacists, basically, who I'm supposed to believe. It's as stupid as when I hear, which I have heard liberal commentators say that Clarence Thomas, well, they used to say this about Ben Carson. Now they say it about Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas is a black white supremacist. So yeah, I guess everybody, everyone I hate is a Nazi. It's just another form of that. So anyway, that's that's back to the Buffalo shooter. So yeah, he was a left-wing person. So yeah, so there is violence from people on the left, but Trump supporters, conservative, libertarians, anti-establishment Republicans, I've never seen it. Even when the rioting, in quotes, on January 6th, Trump supporters did not, even bring a single firearm into the Capitol. So if you're doing an insurrection, if you're trying to take over a government, as opposed to protest an unfair election, but if you're trying to take over a government, wouldn't you at least bring, one gun? Not one gun in the Capitol. They were even, these rioters, these insurrectionists, these white supremacists, whatever they were even polite enough to stay inside the ropes when they passed through Statuary Hall in the Capitol. So once again, I'm not forgiving, or he's forgiving. I'm not saying everything that happened on January 6th is fine, but it's not a big deal. So all of which is to say, you might want to consider the fact, if you have fallen for any of this stuff, that you might have been misled by the Democrats and their lackeys in the media. If you think in any way that what Liz Cheney is doing is on the right side of the law, or that being conservative means using dirty tricks and collaborating with people like Pelosi and Adam Schiff, then all I can suggest to anyone watching this, is just to read Burke or John Locke or Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative, or perhaps listen to, there's a great speech by Ronald Reagan from 1964. It's on YouTube, called A Time for Choosing, and reconnect what it really means to be a conservative. And Liz Cheney is not that. She may have certain conservative opinions, but she has chosen the side, and she's chosen to support her family, which is a very corrupt family, the Cheneys, and the corrupt establishment. And just to wrap it up, just to show you, what's the big issue on the left? Abortion. So with the Supreme Court ruling, we'll cover this on another tape, but with the Supreme Court ruling on abortion, Liz Cheney, in spite of all this stuff, has come out and said, she supports the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and not a peep from any Democrat, against her. Like, that's fine. But we all know what's going to happen. And just sort of excuse my language, but they're just using Liz Cheney. And once this hearing is done, and once she's out of office, they will throw her away like a used condom. They don't care about Liz Cheney. They don't like the Cheneys either. They don't like her other conservative opinions. They're just using her. She's a sucker, or she's just so bitter that she must take down anyone who insulted the Cheney family name. I'm sure she'll get a job at some think tank, or be on the board of directors of some company. Maybe a payback to her father. She'll be on the board of directors of some weapons manufacturing company. But whatever the case is, this is the twilight of her political career, because the Democrats are going to throw her away, and the Republicans don't like her. All right, so that's the Cheney report. Stay tuned for more later.